YouTube, what is good? Today we are talking about consistency in your photography, specifically how to create a consistent feel throughout a set of photos. Now this video is inspired by y'all's questions. Last night I posted a photo set to my Instagram and I switched it up a little bit. Over the course of the last month, I've been experimenting with making photo sets that are all on one thing. You don't have to swipe through them on social media. I think that's one limiting factor to social media. If you create a set of images, like let's say at a gallery, you're looking at the wall. There's a general aesthetic, where on social media you have to swipe through the photos and you kind of lose that continuity and that feeling of the photos all working off one another. And when I made this Instagram post sharing these sets of photos, the main question I got in the comments, DMs, and email was, how can I get my photos to have this feeling of consistency through them? How do you make all the photos match up so well? So today I'm going to break it down for you. Now, one quick disclaimer with this video: there is an element to this that is intuitive that I can't teach. You know, I look at the photos, I say, I think these three are gonna look good together, and that's just it. It's not necessarily something I can show you. One thing I can recommend is look at different artists, check out images of galleries online, figure out what great painters across time have done to create sets of paintings and different things to have an aesthetic, and then try to apply that to your own photos. That's the one thing I can't teach you, is just the eyeball thing of looking at photos and knowing what will work together. But what I can teach you is how to make them all feel similar, and that's what we're gonna do. Do me a solid, hit that thumbs up button on today's video. So the first thing we're gonna talk about is when you're actually out shooting. Now, one thing you can start off with is just keeping your gear consistent throughout the set of photos you're making. Shoot at the same millimeters. So for me, I love 35 millimeter. Let's say I'm using my Fujifilm X100F. I go out, I try to make a set of photos all with that camera. So off the bat, each photo is going to feel similar because the focal length is the exact same. This is just a basic thing you can do to start having some continuity in a set of photos. So use the same lens to start out, and then as you get better, you can start switching focal lengths and all that stuff. So that's a good starting point. Now, the second thing you can do in camera to get this continuity is make all your photos in that particular set on the same day. You wouldn't know this by just looking at my social media, but each one of those photo sets that I posted, each one was made on the exact same day. The idea with the set was kind of to tell a slight story of what was going on with my day, but what this does is it creates similar lighting conditions, similar feelings throughout the photos that you don't even have to worry about in editing. The day is the same, feels the same throughout the day. The photos are all going to feel the same. It becomes much more difficult when you make photos on separate days in separate lighting, in separate conditions, and then you got to try to put them all together. To get some continuity, you want to try to make the photos in situations that have continuity. Get what I'm saying? The third thing that we can do now is keep your white balance the same when you are out shooting. Just set your white balance to something neutral, maybe 5,000, and use that all day long. Now, granted, have some discretion with this. Take that with a grain of salt, because if the lighting conditions change like crazy, let's say you go somewhere that's very blue or somewhere that's very orange, you might want to make some adjustments to this white balance. But if the lighting conditions throughout the day when you're making this photo set stay similar, just keep your white balance constant. One mistake I made for years when I was creating photo sets for clients is I would have my white balance set to auto. So I could be shooting a product or something in the exact same lighting conditions, but each time my camera would select a new white balance point. So one photo might be a little bluer than the other. One photo might be a little warmer than the other. And this is problematic in editing because it's very difficult to match them up. When you shoot in that exact same white balance, you can just go in and post and say, all right, this one's a little too blue, let's bring it a little warmer. And this one's a little warm, let's bring it to blue. But everything starts at the same baseline, and it's easier to get everything to match up. That is what I did with this photo set of shoes right here. We have a lot of shoe photos all shot on the same day in different lighting conditions, and I shot them all at the same white balance, and then I went into post and I made adjustments accordingly so that they all matched up, as opposed to shooting in auto white balance and then going in and having to guess and just get everything together that way. It's literally confusing for me to say it out loud when I'm thinking about it, so don't do that. If you want some consistency, use a consistent white balance. Remember, raw files are always better for white balance adjustments. So those are some things you can do when you're actually out shooting. Now let's talk about what you can do when you're in the computer. Now this can get a little bit tricky here because each photo is different, each photo's lighting is different, but here's the things that I like to do. The first thing I like to do is try to keep my tone curve the same throughout each photo if I'm using a tone curve. And all I do, I set one tone curve. If I use a preset that I've already made, I just take that, copy it, apply it to the other photos, and I start there. So now each one is consistent across the board in the tone curve. And then I'll make my adjustments to shadows, white balance, all that stuff, and I try to keep my contrast similar throughout as well. Now this requires a little bit of an eyeball test. Sometimes you might need more contrast for a particular photo, so it will match up with other photos. I'll leave that up to you and your discretion. But basically what I try to do is edit each photo so that they're similar. It's as simple as that. Don't go too crazy with one photo's tone curve, having all the blacks crushed and then you got all this fade and one doesn't. That is not going to work. Try to keep everything as uniform as possible. Another thing you can pay attention to in post is your color adjustments. So let's say you make some adjustments to your blues in one photo. Try to make these same blue adjustments in every other photo so that they tie in together. It would be really weird to have one photo where the blues are cyan and very, like turquoise-y, and then have another photo where the blues are very blue or navy. Now, if this happened naturally and the theme of your set was like blue images, this would completely work. But if you're making two photos, let's say of the ocean, one way, one another way, and the blues don't match up, that can be problematic for the continuity of your photo set. So once again, use discretion, but keep it in mind that if you have an element of one photo and the color is adjusted and that same element shows up in another photo, try to keep them having the same adjustment. That also applies to split toning. Now, split toning is one of my favorite things to do because it can add a vibe and a feeling to a photo. So if you make a split toning adjustment, let's say to the highlights in one image, apply that split tone to the other images. Every photo in your set now has the same split tone adjustment to the highlights, so each photo ties in together because the highlights are adjusted accordingly. You can do the same thing with the shadows, or you can take all the photos into Photoshop and make adjustments there. Sometimes I like to make adjustments to the color balance, make these sliders move around, and then I'll take these color balance adjustments, grab them, slide them over to another photo, and now these same adjustments apply to that other image. So once again, you can get continuity between your two photos. The color balance adjustment is nice because it can change the midtone, highlights, and shadows. It's another variation of split toning, and you can carry this across all your photos. So if you make small little adjustments to these areas, they can really make each photo tie in together because all the midtones, highlights, and shadows will match up as far as the tone and colors go. Now, this same idea of using Photoshop applies to color adjustments, hue, saturation. It also applies to LUTs. If you apply a LUT to one photo, bring the opacity to a point that it works on all the other photos. If you haven't figured out the idea here, you want to do everything that you can so that all three of these photos are edited the way you want, but also work well together. One of the big takeaway points and one big mistake I see a lot of people make is they edit, say, 3 or 4 photos as individual images. They look at it, they edit the photo and say, oh, this looks how I want it to look. Then they go to another photo, edit that and say, this is how I want it to look, etc. And then they try to combine all these photos together. You can't look at a photo set as a group of photos. You need to look at a photo set as a set of photos and make all your photo adjustments accordingly so that each photo in the set ties in together. You see what I'm saying? You don't want to just bring a bunch of random elements into the kitchen. You want to make sure you're picking all the right ingredients so they all work together and create what you want. Now, real quick, a lot of people were asking me about the layout of these photo sets, how I do them. I do them in Photoshop. It is literally so simple. I just did it one day. I was like, this is something I want to try out. All I did, I opened a blank artboard or whatever, and then I ungrouped it. So now we have a blank canvas. Then I laid down one photo. It was a 16:9. I shrunk it to the size that I want, and I put it right in the middle of this canvas. And then I dragged in the 2 other photos, made them the same size, set them to even distances from the middle photo, and bang, made the background white, and there you go. It is super simple. It is not as complicated as you think. I didn't use any apps or anything like that. Photoshop is the way to go. That's it. That's everything I know about creating a consistent set of photos. It is one of the biggest things I do in my freelance career. One of my biggest clients is a product photography client. So the key with all these product photos is each one needs to tie in together. I've been doing it for years, and that's literally all the information that I know. So I really hope that helped you out, answered any questions you had. If you have more questions, drop them in the comments. Myself or one of the other great viewers on this channel will try to answer it for you. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button for me. And I know I just covered a lot of information. I threw it all at you at once, but like I said, that's everything I know. That's how you can get some consistency in your photos without really doing anything special. There you go, y'all. Thank you. I'll see you next time.